These Ivorians, repatriated to the Ivory Coast from Libya, say they risk being sold into slavery.
They sell Africans over there. In Libya, they sell men. Even 15-year-old Libyans are there in a car, they're armed. They'll come and kidnap you, and they'll sell you for $70 to $150. And then others will resell you.
As soon as you arrive in Libya, the first thing that happens is that you are taken away and sold. Our black brothers from West Africa, wherever you are from, a Malian, a Senegalese, or any other nationality from the West, even an Ivorian, you are sold. And for what? $700.
But these migrants will tell you that life is so hard in their home country that it's worth almost any risk to make a new start in Europe.
Life is so fucking bad that these niggas are sometimes willing to risk it and get put in slavery just to have a fresh start. Like I said, that these three religions, they took everything from Africa. They took everything from Africa. That life is so bad that niggas will risk. They will risk becoming slaves just to get a fresh start. And y'all niggas talking about, oh, slavery's been outlawed by the U.S. since like the 1800s. Oh, slavery's been outlawed by the Middle East since 1906. Bullshit. These niggas told you slavery is still going on to this day. And y'all niggas still don't see it. Y'all still blinded by it. Y'all still don't give a fuck. You don't care that your own brothers and sisters is getting raped and sold for a few dollars just so these get a fresh life. That shit's crazy. That shit's fucking crazy. That shit's fucking crazy. So, I already proved to y'all slavery still exists. I showed y'all niggas how bad it was just to get over here. Now I'm gonna show y'all niggas what they did to us once we made it over here. If you was lucky, if you was one of the few that fucking made it, because like I said, at minimum, 50% of niggas died on their way here. So, millions of niggas died to make it here. If you was one of the few niggas, select few, it wasn't few, but if you was unlucky enough to be lucky to make it to the US, this is what they did to your black ass. I'm gonna show y'all. So, we got maintaining white dominance. In 1850, a publication provided guidance to slave owners on how to produce the ideal slave. I don't know if y'all know this shit, but you know, there was a publication and everyone read this shit in the US, and it was how to make the ideal slave. And it was hella effective. So this is just gonna be some of the main points that the biggest points that it had to offer. So it says maintain strict discipline and unconditional submission. Create a sense of personal inferiority so slaves know their place. Instill fear in the mind of slaves. Teach the servants to take interest in the master's enterprise, and ensure that the slave is uneducated, helpless, and dependent by depriving them of access to education and recreation. This should kind of sound like society today. It says maintain strict discipline and unconditional submission. We submit to the government. We believe what them niggas tell us. It's to create a sense of personal inferiority so slaves know their place. Back then, black people wasn't in, lawyers and doctors and shit like that. They forced us to be inferior. Even now to this day, black people still feel like we're inferior. That's why when they say whatever we gotta do, we gotta work like 10 times harder than the white man, because we know, or they think that we inferior and that we gotta work somewhat harder than them. But in reality, we way better than them niggas. And then it says instill fear in the minds of slaves. If your ass would read, they will beat your ass. If you attempted to read 2 times, they will cut out your fucking tongue. So, they had the most brutalist of fucking punishments to scare us and to get in our fucking minds right. And it says teach the servants to take interest in the master's enterprise. So, what is that? What does that mean? That means, teach servants to be interested in what the white man believes. What's that? Money, stock. That's, learning about non-black shit. Because most black people out there don't know much about their homeland. Niggas think that Africa's a country, nigga. They don't even know that shit's a continent, nigga. So they teach black people everything but black shit. And then it says, ensure that the slave is uneducated, helpless, and dependent by depriving them of access to education and recreation. So that pretty much sounds like how it is today. Now to jump on my black people, because I know some people need EDD and unemployment and all that, but there's plenty of black people out there that know that they got unemployment money coming through, so they're not going to work. It teaches them niggas to be dependent on the government and to think that they're helpless. But I'm trying to let y'all know that we not helpless, bro. If we could get our fucking minds right and actually teach ourselves what really happened and what, how the past was and how we could change our future, we gonna be all right. But niggas don't want to know that. Niggas want to think that, they helpless and they need the white man to save them, which is why they pray to fucking God, why they pray to Jesus. They believe in the white man's gonna save them. Like, come on, bro. But anyways, let's get into this shit. I'm gonna start talking about slavery punishments because, like I said, if you was unlucky enough to be lucky to make it here, this is what they did to us. This is what they did to our people. It says, former slaves may offer the most harrowing accounts of slave abuse and torture. Moses Roper was born of his African and Native American mother, who was a slave to his English father. After Moses escaped his bondage, he wrote a book about his life. He explicitly outlined various tortures and indignities that slaves in America had to suffer. Moses recounted the sport and pleasure that some owners took in corporal punishment, which was usually like a lynching. Then he said he described a slaveholder who hammered nails into a hog's head, which is a large barrel, and let the nail points protruding inside. His slaves were stuffed into these barrels and rolled down long, steep hills while the owners and other slaves watched. So he's literally telling you, first-hand source, that a few slave owners that he knew would get like a barrel, like a long wooden barrel, and they would stuff slaves inside of it. And they would nail hammers, or they would nail nails, and the inside of the pointy side of the nail would be inside the barrel, and then they would kick the barrel. And so just imagine you're in a barrel with fucking nails inside, and you're rolling fast as shit. Those things are just gonna scrape all the way down through you, probably pierce your bone. And these niggas just did that for fun. Like he said, they did it for sport. Let's see what then it says. It says, Harriet Jacobs also escaped slavery and wrote about her exploits. She described falling into the possession of a slave owner who sexually harassed her on a regular basis, despite the protest of his wife. So his own wife was like, baby, you're married. Don't have sex with her. She's black. She's a nigger. And he still wanted her. And it says, to avoid him, Harriet hid in the crawl space in her grandmother's ceiling for 7 years before fleeing to England. In another harrowing account, Harriet told of a slaveholder who lived close to her. He had hundreds of slaves. His favorite punishment was to tie up a slave, suspend him above the ground, and start a fire above him. A fatty piece of pork was cooked by the fire. Then the burning fat dripped onto the bare skin of the slave. So, I don't gotta tell you. She's literally telling you they would hang slaves upside down, start a fire above them, and just imagine burning hot fucking fat just splatting on you all over. Probably for hours at a time. And this shit wasn't, every now and then. I guarantee this shit was all the time. Weekly, weekend, monthly. And it says, punishments were often made public. Other slaves were forced to watch as a warning that they should behave, that they should behave or be disciplined the same way. At times, other owners or other people from nearby towns came to watch as a form of entertainment. After slavery was abolished, public lynchings and hangings continued until the 20th century. One horrific method of punishment was public burning. Slaves were either tied to a stake or above a fire. Some slaves fainted or passed out from smoke inhalation before the fire began to consume their bodies, but many were tortured by the flames before they finally died. Again, this is good white folk, good Christian folks who are burning black people at a stake and just burning them. And as y'all see, this is normal people. It's not like these are some crazy people. This is the good people of the society. And then moving on, I bet y'all didn't know that they had human zoos, and they would go to, while they were fighting Africa and other countries, they would go in Africa, take black people, and they would put them in zoos and talking about, oh, this is the lost link of, the Neanderthal. Because like I said, they taught us that we was monkeys when really they are, because they got Reese's monkey blood. But yeah, they would teach us that we were monkeys. And so they would just places in zoos and have little exhibitions or exhibits, and people would come pay money to just watch black people in a cage. So I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all. I believe I got a video, and it's just gonna describe just how fucked up the white man was.
But perhaps the most exotic people group brought to St. Louis for public display were pygmies from the African Congo.
Will the pygmies brought last week to the World's Fair prove Darwin's theory of the missing link? Will a study of the little black children of the African jungles shed light on the theory evolved by Darwin as regards the evolution of the human race? Dr. W.J. McGee, chief of the anthropology department of the World's Fair, is convinced that it will. This is the first time that the Aboriginal people of Africa have been brought to an English-speaking country. This is the first opportunity that has been presented to scientists to study them. Many characteristics were noticed in the pygmies that closely resemble the ape or the simian type. It is believed that the pygmies, who are said to represent the lowest form of human development, are next removed from the simian family.
There, nearly 10 years later, Ota Benga shot himself to death. Benga had expressed a desire to return to his native Africa, but by 1916, the continent was being further ravaged by European powers as they fought World War I, so return was no longer an option.
I think the hopelessness of it all, the trauma he had sustained, the loneliness, and I can't even imagine. He had no idea what had become of his people, if his village was still even there. So it's not hard to imagine the myriad reasons why he would have sunk into this deep depression and that ultimately caused him to take his life.
In one final indignity, the New York Times published an obituary assuring readers that during Ota Benga's stay in their city, he was actually an employee of the Bronx Zoo who had been hired to feed the apes. According to the Times, it was this employment that gave rise to the unfounded report that Ota Benga was being held in the park as one of the exhibits in the monkey cage. Ota Benga was largely forgotten by history until the 1990s.
So y'all heard what these disgusting ass, foul, white, Christian people were doing. Locking up black people in a fucking zoo, talking about, oh, he was an employee. Man, fuck that. Rest in peace, brother. But y'all see that this is some good people. This ain't no satanic motherfucker, no low social status. This is high people, high fucking officials, echelons, locking up black people in a zoo, talking about, oh, the closest link to, Neanderthals, and the whole social evolutionary theory of Darwin and all that, which is straight bullshit, which is founded on nothing but race, and niggas really use that shit as another like information source, saying like, oh, well, it's been proven that black people are closely related to monkey, but that shit was a bunch of bullshit. No, we not. Y'all niggas is related to monkeys, because as I said in my old video, if you're not black, you got Reese's monkey blood and you got other DNA, which means you got monkey blood. Y'all ancestors was fucking monkeys. We wasn't. Anyways, moving on. Another part, it says lynching, enslaved blacks were regularly hanged at the will of their master, most often to the official reason of revolt. However, it could have been for any cause whatsoever and merely labeled as such. So, niggas was getting hanged left and right, and, sometimes they just said, oh, it was because they was trying to revolt. And sometimes it wasn't trying to revolt. But, niggas was lying. Moving on, you got this picture right here of this brother getting his leg locked up. And pretty much what they would use this contraption. I forget what it's called. But they would pretty much tie up his leg from the back. And they would leave it like that for months at a time to years. And at the end of the whole process, you weren't able to use that specific leg at all. So your leg would lose its muscle memory and it literally just wouldn't be able to move no more. And this was a very popular way how they pretty much stopped like revolts. They knew, okay, if we locked up their leg and they couldn't use their legs no more, they couldn't run away. So it was pretty often where they would just tie up black folks and do this so that way they wouldn't run away. How fucked up is that? And here we go, we got branding. So we got branding, which is, one thing y'all bitch ass niggas like to do in them colleges, talking about, oh, I go to a BCU or I go to a black college university, but y'all niggas is still pledging to the white man. Y'all niggas still pledging to Greek gods and all this bullshit, talking about I'm Alpha Kappa Psi. Like, y'all niggas is some coons is what y'all niggas are, pledging to the white man. And we don't want y'all niggas started on what y'all niggas be doing in the fraternities. We know y'all niggas be doing some gay shit. Y'all niggas be butt naked, fucking grabbing each other's ass, doing all types of shit, fucking pigs. We know y'all niggas be nasty. And then we got castration. During slavery, black men would often be killed if they were accused of rape. However, when accused of attempted rape, they were often punished with castration. I already spoke on this, but some more fucked up shit these niggas would do. We got Lying on his stomach, the victim's hands and legs are tied to the stakes while he is being whipped by the black overseer. Next to one of his legs is the iron spiked collar with attached chains, which was often attached to the neck of captured fugitive slaves. So this is what they would do to you if you try running away. They would chain your ass up, and a coon ass nigga will beat your ass. Next video I'm gonna play for you is of Dr. Ben, R.I.P., great scholar. He pretty much gonna talk to you a little bit about, you know, the genocides, not one, but genocides as in plural, about how they treated us, what they did to us. So I'm gonna just let the brother speak.
Holocaust is not with an, our Holocaust doesn't end with a T. It ends with an S. Holocaust. 50 million of us in the southern tip of Africa, murdered because we were what we were. Over 25 million of us in what was then called Congo. Countless millions more elsewhere. 15 million of us across the Atlantic in what they call a triangular trade, as our women took their newborn and threw them to the sharks, which was they thought was a better life. A mother taking her son as she gave birth, and only sometimes hear the child, never seen it because it was already contracted for. And we are asked to forgive this, even to forget it. And we pray and kneel and say we will never touch a hair in the other man who did that to our mothers, our daughters, our sisters.
That's right.
What kind of men are we?
That's right.
To stay there and see our women being so molested and mistreated and kneel and pray and ask, would you think Jesus would have stood there and let a man do that to Mary? But no, you don't believe in violence. Everybody else does. But you don't.
So y'all heard him. Easily at least 50 million brothers and sisters, little girls, grandmas, daughters killed and were involved in just this transatlantic slave trade. But I don't want to speak on it no more because I just can't even fathom. Moving on, we got this picture right here, and as y'all can see, this isn't, like I said, this isn't no lowly people. These aren't no crackheads of society. These are white folks in business suits. Look at them. They got the little pocket watch right here. They all got their little suit, and niggas is just lined up watching this black man get beat for entertainment. Cause like I said previously, they would do this shit for entertainment. How fucked up do you gotta be to just torture another human being for entertainment? Oh, I know, they were being good Christian men. You know, they were punishing us, you know, as we should obey our masters. Fuck out of here. It says, in America, slaves, including pregnant women and children, were often whipped as punishment. The famous image of the slave Gordon, aka Whip Peters, reveals that the skin on his back was raised with lattice of scars with brutal and repeated whippings. However, some owners did not stop there. When their slaves' wounds began to heal, these owners ordered that the wounds be split open and that products such as red pepper and turpentine be applied to the gashes. According to some accounts, one owner ground a brick into rubble and dust and mixed it with lard and had it rubbed into the wounds of a slave. So, do y'all, like I said, can y'all comprehend how fucked up and demonic you have to be to do this? I can't even comprehend it. And then we have instruments of torture: thumb screws, cotton screws, metal and wood neck collars with protruding spikes and metal masks were all placed on enslaved people, sometimes for months at a time, to remind them of defying the slave master's wishes. So you see, you got this brother with the contraption around his neck, and like it says, there's spikes not only on the outside but also on the inside. So how do you think he sleeps? He can't. If he leans back, the shit's literally gonna just stab into his skin. So, like I said, how fucked up do you gotta be to do this shit? I can't even comprehend it. But moving on, I'm gonna play some videos from Dr. Joy. This is from one of her lectures she did. I will pray that y'all go look this up. I'll actually pray to that. You know, I pray that y'all look this up, because she does an excellent job on this. Definitely check her out. But I'm gonna just let her speak. She gonna talk about white presidential people. She's gonna talk about other, you know, people who created certain shit, and she's just gonna talk about how mistreated us black people. So like I said, I'm just let her do the talking, and I hope you guys can comprehend what she's saying, because the shit is just so fucked up that words can't even explain it. So I'm gonna just let her take it.
Know about the first thing you hear, John Newton. What's the next thing you hear? Amazing Grace. John Newton, Amazing Grace. Well, let's figure out what happened before he got Amazing Grace. He said slaves are lesser creatures without Christian souls and thus are not destined for the next world. Now, what becomes important about this kind, and you'll see it both in American history as well, there is this kind of dehumanization of African people. Because you got to ask yourself this question: how do people who deem themselves superior, who see themselves as the civilizers, who recognize themselves as what we call manifest destiny, the white man's burden of civilizing all the rest of the races, how do you reconcile being the superior being and engaging in barbaric behavior? Now I can go to sleep because I'm not really dealing with the human being. Are you following me? Okay, let's see what else he said. He said, when the women and girls are taken on board a ship naked, trembling, terrified, they are often exposed to the wanton rudeness of white savages. The prey is divided upon the spot. Look at the choice of words, the prey. Resistance or refusal would be utterly in vain. And then he says, I sinned with a high hand. Yeah, and then he wrote Amazing Grace. Okay. So it's really important to understand that hand in hand with the behavior was a mindset that is so damaging. You see, I call it the secret. Not the secret that everybody's been talking about, that secret. This secret is the kind that makes you sick. How many people here are in mental health, have done direct mental health treatment with folks? If you've done you know that the secrets make us sick, yes? Isn't it the secrets that cause people the pathology? Right? How long have white people had to hold this secret? How long and how many generations had to stop and pretend Grandpa didn't do what he did? That the wealth we enjoy was not on the backs of some of these little girls. Think about how long one had to keep that secret. And the only thing you could do is either pathologize the other. It's all their fault, because it certainly wasn't great-granddad. Look how well he dresses. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when I say that this pathology goes hand in hand, I kid you not. Linnaeus properly began the science of anthropology. So here we have the father of anthropology. Although color classification of races dated back to the ancient Egyptians, anthropologists refer to Linnaeus's Systema Naturae of 1735 as the first modern study of man. While Linnaeus advanced classification with his use of a color criterion, he also fixed on his 4 families of man certain moral and intellectual peculiarities that continued into the 19th century anthropological vocabulary. He described Homo Americanus. Who might that be? That would be Native American. American Indians. Homo Americanus. And what did he say about them? He said they were reddish, choleric, obstinate, contented, and regulated by custom. Homo Europaeus, as white, fickle, sanguine, blue-eyed, gentle, and governed by laws. Homo Asiaticus, that'd be Asians, as sallow, grave, dignified, avaricious, and ruled by opinions. And Homo Afer, as black, phlegmatic, cunning, lazy, lustful, careless, and governed by caprice. These insights into what Linnaeus defined as racial character, personality traits, behavior, intelligence, language, and a host of other related categories were transmitted into subsequent attempts at a science of classification and became more fixed than the races themselves. Not a shred of science here. But it is in a book. Well, let's see what he said. He said, blacks smelled bad and were physically unattractive. Well, this was inconsistent with his behavior, because, you know, he fathered slaves. Sally Hemings. So it didn't smell that bad, huh? Now here's a more important one. He said we required less sleep. Now that one's more interesting to me. Why would he need to? What dissonance was he feeling that he would need to believe that blacks required less sleep? Why? What did he do? You know, he owned slaves. So what do you think? How hard do you think he worked them? What was a work day for a slave? Sunrise to sunset. But do you have any empirical evidence, Joy? Can you prove that? Because you know, if you can't write it, you know, count it and measure it, it didn't happen in your opinion of why he believed we required less sleep. They would show a large frame man and they would find an injury where the muscle actually detached itself from the bone as a result of exertion and not injury. Stay with me. It detaches itself from the bone as a result of exertion. That means you work so hard, the muscle detached itself from the bone. You don't see those kind of injuries in contemporary society because no one's going to work that hard. Unless, of course, you have a gun trained on you from sunrise to sunset. So we do have empirical evidence of how hard folks worked. Then he went on to say that we were dumb, cowardly, and incapable of feeling grief. Why would Thomas Jefferson need to believe that? Why would he need to believe we didn't feel grief? What was he doing, do you think, that produced cognitive dissonance? You were killing people? Not only were you killing people, beating them, you were selling them, yes? Selling mothers away from their children and husbands away from wives. And surely they don't feel it, because if they felt it, that would make them human like me. So I simply say, and you see, it's not even so much that he said it, but he was an important person. If Joe, nobody said it, but he said it. So what do you think the rest of the folks, uneducated laborers, believed? Well, they don't feel grief, you know. After all, Thomas Jefferson says they don't. So he becomes a critical person in making those statements. But you see, it was all to relieve and to settle the conscience that he died with. Then I looked at what happened in the sugar plantations. And this was amazing. One final set of grim numbers underlines the way slaves on sugar plantations like Codrington, which was a plantation in Barbados, were systematically worked to an early death. When slavery ended in the United States, slaves imported over the centuries had grown to a population of nearly 4 million. When it ended in the British West Indies, total slave imports of well over 2 million left a surviving slave population of only about 670,000. More than twice as many slaves were shipped to the island of Jamaica alone than all 13 North American colonies combined. The Caribbean was a slaughterhouse. In fact, the reason why there was more importation of slaves to these plantations is because they died so frequently. They were treated so badly, ate so poorly, that females never reached their menstrual cycles. They never actually started their menstrual cycles, so they couldn't reproduce, you see. And so many of them died, they had to import more. That's how treacherous was, you lazy black folks that you are. Isn't that ironic? The way he did it was he actually worked on unanesthetized, did experiments on unanesthetized slave women. He created a makeshift hospital in his backyard in the mid-1800s. He built the first vaginal speculum from a pewter spoon. And he reasoned that slave women were able to bear great pain, meaning we don't need any anesthesia, because their race made them more durable and thus they were well suited for painful medical experimentation. We didn't even, because we didn't feel like other women could feel. This man would cut into women, cut into them, and just said, well, since they're black, they don't really feel it. Unbelievable. And more importantly is what he did to infants, because not only did he experiment on women, he also experimented on infants. He said that black infants suffered from something he called trismus nascentium, which is now commonly referred to as neonatal tetanus. That is a shoemaker's awl. and that's the 1800s shoemaker's awl. He would stick that into the heads of brand new infants in an effort to realign their skulls based on the indecency and intellectual flaws of their parents, to treat the malady. Of course, it was 100% death rate. But that's what he would stick in the head of a baby at birth. And so these are things that are so horrific that you can't possibly wrap your head around it. And this man is, just Google him. And you think to myself, I think to myself, if I were up here in front of you right now, and this is going to become very important as I move into the other slides. If I stomped a puppy to death up here, just a little puppy, and stomped it right here to death in front of you, most of you would need therapy. And I would be arrested probably faster than killing a black man for killing a puppy. How could you do that? Do you realize how much dissonance you have to remove in order to stick that into the brain of a child?